The silence of deep space was not empty, it was heavy. It pressed against the hull of the UES Horizon, the first ship from Earth to travel faster than light. Inside the massive vessel, the air was cool and recycled, smelling faintly of ozone and coffee. On the bridge, the crew sat in high-backed chairs, their eyes fixed on the main view screen. Captain Tom Cole stood in the center of the bridge. He was a man in his late 50s with hair the color of iron and a face that had seen too much. He kept his hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid. For 3 weeks, they had explored the sector, finding nothing but dust and distant stars. Tom preferred the quiet. It meant they were safe. Next to him sat Ambassador Mark Stern. Mark was younger, with a nervous energy that Tom found tiring. Mark spent his days drafting speeches and practicing greetings for alien civilizations, convinced that humanity would make a good first impression. He tapped his day top hat constantly, his leg bouncing up and down. "Captain," Mark said, breaking the silence. "We are approaching the coordinates where the anomaly was detected." Tom looked at the screen. "I see it, Mr. Stern." Ahead of them, space seemed to shimmer. A distortion rippled through the darkness, like heat rising from asphalt. Suddenly, a ship appeared. It was immense, far larger than the horizon. It was sleek and silver, shaped like a teardrop, with elegant lines that suggested art rather than war. It sat there, motionless, blocking their path. "No response to our hails," said Lieutenant Jason, the communications officer. His voice was tight. "Sir, that ship is massive. Its power output is off the charts." "Keep trying," Tom ordered. "Open all channels. We come in peace." Before Jason could send another signal, the view screen flickered. The tactical map vanished, replaced by a face. It was not a human face. The being had pale, translucent skin and large, black eyes that seemed to look right through the screen. It wore a robe of shimmering light. "I am Counselor Vex," the being said. The voice did not come from the speakers, it echoed inside their heads. It was a cold, mental intrusion that made everyone on the bridge shiver. Mark Stern jumped up from his chair, smoothing his jacket. "Counselor Vex. I am Ambassador Mark Stern of the United Earth Sphere. We represent humanity. We apologize for the intrusion into your space. We are new to these stars. We wish to establish diplomatic relations and learn from the Galactic Council." Vex did not look at Mark. The alien's gaze seemed to pass right through him, focusing on nothing. The silence stretched out for a long, uncomfortable minute. "Your species is known to us," Vex said in their minds. The tone was not angry, it was bored, like a teacher speaking to a misbehaving child. "You are humans. You are violent, aggressive, and chaotic. You pollute your own planet and fight endless wars among yourselves. You are a plague." Tom felt a muscle in his jaw twitch. He stepped forward. "We have overcome our wars. We are united now. We are exploring to expand our knowledge." Vex's eyes finally focused on Tom. "Ignorance does not excuse the threat you pose. The Galactic Council has watched your kind for centuries. You have developed faster than light travel. This is a technology you are not mature enough to possess." "We earned it," Tom said, his voice low and dangerous. "You stole it from the wreckage of a probe," Vex corrected. "Regardless, you have it. And because you have it, you are a danger to the peace of the galaxy. We do not trade with dangerous children. We do not befriend plagues." Mark Stern's face turned pale. "Counselor, surely there is room for discussion." We can sign treaties. We can submit to inspections. We just want to be part of the community. Community. Vex actually laughed, a dry, rasping sound in their minds. You are not ready for community. You are ready for the leash. Tom moved his hand toward the weapon control panel, but he stopped. He knew it was futile. The alien ship outside dwarfed them. A single shot from that ship would turn the horizon into dust. What do you want? Tom asked. Vex raised a hand. On the screen, an image of Earth appeared. Then, red targets began to appear over the major cities: New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing. This is the ultimatum, Vex said. You have exactly 24 of your standard hours. You will surrender your faster-than-light drive technology. You will dismantle your military fleets. You will destroy your weapon factories. You will confine your species to your own solar system. You will accept a steward. We will send a representative to your world to ensure you never leave your cage again. If we refuse, Tom asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we will sterilize the surface of your planet, Vex said simply. We will burn your cities and boil your oceans until no life remains. It is a mercy. It prevents your violence from spreading to other innocent worlds. The bridge of the horizon was deadly silent. The crew members looked at each other with wide eyes. The horror of the threat hung in the air like a physical weight. They weren't just asking for surrender, they were asking for the end of human history. You cannot be serious, Mark stammered. Genocide, that is not the action of a civilized council. We are the guardians of order, Vex said. Chaos must be pruned. You have 24 hours. When we return, we expect your signal of submission. If we do not receive it, the firing sequence will begin automatically. The screen went black. The view screen returned to the image of the sleek silver ship hanging in the void. Sir, Jason whispered, they are powering up their engines. They are leaving. They know we can't stop them, Tom said softly. The silver ship shimmered and vanished, jumping into hyperspace. They were gone as quickly as they had arrived. They left behind a terrified crew and a countdown clock that had begun ticking in the back of everyone's mind. Tom turned to look at his crew. They were young, recruited from the best of Earth's academies. They had trained for exploration, for science, for discovery. They had not trained for total annihilation. Set a course for Earth, Tom said, his voice steady. Maximum warp. Aye, Captain, Jason replied. His hands shook slightly as he input the commands. The stars outside stretched into lines of light as the horizon accelerated. Tom walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. He looked at the empty spot where the alien ship had been. He had fought in wars back on Earth. He knew the smell of blood and the feel of recoil. But this was different. This was a god coming down from the mountain and telling the ants to stop building. Mark Stern collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. We have to surrender, he mumbled through his fingers. We have to. If we don't, everyone dies. Everyone. My children, your grandchildren, everyone. We don't know that they will actually do it, Tom said, though he knew they were not bluffing. Did you see his eyes? Mark looked up, tears forming. He didn't care. He talked about killing billions of people the same way I talk about stepping on a bug. They will do it, Tom. They will burn us all. Tom didn't answer. He looked at the tactical display. Earth was hours away. He had to get back there. He had to tell the command council. The journey home felt like a funeral march. The mess halls were empty. No one spoke in the corridors. The crew moved like ghosts. The realization of their place in the universe had shattered them. They thought they were pioneers, the vanguard of a great age. Instead, they were a child who had wandered into a lion's den, and the lion was showing its teeth. Hours later, the horizon dropped out of warp near Mars. The red planet looked beautiful in the distance, silent and dead. Beyond it lay the blue marble of Earth. Earth Control is hailing us, sir, Jason said. They are asking why we returned early. Put them on, Tom said. The face of General Scott appeared on the screen. Scott was an old friend, a hard man who commanded Earth's defense forces from a bunker deep underground. He looked tired. Tom, Scott said. You were scheduled to be out there for another month. What happened? Tom took a deep breath. General, we made contact. Scott's eyes widened. Aliens, are they friendly? No, Tom said. They are not. Tom recounted the meeting. He told Scott about Vex, about the telepathy, and the threats. He told him about the demands to dismantle the military and surrender the technology. He told him about the 24-hour deadline. When Tom finished, the bridge was silent again. General Scott stared at the camera, his face unreadable. Did they say they would sterilize us? Scott asked quietly. Yes, Tom confirmed. They used those exact words. They said we are a plague. Scott leaned back in his chair. He looked at someone off-screen, then turned back to the camera. Return to base, Tom. Land at Geneva. We are calling an emergency session of the World Council. We need to figure out what we are going to do. General, Tom said, leaning closer to the camera. We can't give them the drives. If we do that, we are trapped on Earth forever. We will wither away and die. And if we don't, Scott said heavily, they burn the world. Scott cut the connection. The horizon descended into the atmosphere, flying over the Atlantic Ocean toward Europe. Below them, the clouds were fluffy and white. To Tom, the Earth looked fragile. It was a small bubble of air and water, floating in a void that wanted to kill it. Mark Stern stood next to Tom's chair again. He had stopped crying, but his eyes were red. There is no choice, he said softly. We surrender. It is better to be alive and trapped than dead and free. Tom looked out the window at the patchwork of fields and cities below. Is it, Mark, is a cage really better than a coffin? If my family is in that cage, Mark said, yes. Tom said nothing. He watched the landing strip approach. The ship shook slightly as the landing gears deployed. The wheels touched down with a screech, and the UES horizon slowed to a halt. As the crew began to power down the ship, Tom remained in his chair. He felt a strange coldness in his chest. He had spent his life fighting enemies who he could see, enemies who bled when you shot them. This enemy was different. They had all the power. They had all the technology. And they had no mercy. But as he sat there, a thought began to form in the back of his mind. It was a small, dangerous thought. It was a memory of the history books back home. History was full of stories of giants who underestimated the small. History was full of empires that fell because they pushed a people too far. Tom stood up. You have your orders, he told his crew. Go home to your families. Be with them tonight. I don't know what tomorrow will look like. The crew filed out, saluting him weakly as they left. Soon, only Tom and a few junior officers remained. He walked to the viewport and looked up at the sky. The sun was setting, painting the clouds in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere out there, beyond the sky, the Galactic Council was waiting. They were counting down the hours. They were waiting for the ants to kneel. Tom turned and walked out of the bridge. His steps were heavy, but they were steady. He had a report to write. But more importantly, he had a war to plan. He just didn't know it yet. The emergency bunker deep beneath the city of Geneva was cold and smelled of recycled air and stale coffee. It was a place designed for the end of the world, but today it felt like the world was already ending. The round table in the center of the room was crowded with the leaders of the most powerful nations on Earth. They sat in silence, their faces pale and illuminated by the harsh glow of a holographic projector in the middle of the table. At the head of the table sat General Scott. He looked older than he had a week ago. He wore his dress uniform, the metals on his chest clinking softly as he shifted in his chair. He watched the faces of the presidents and prime ministers. He saw fear in their eyes. He saw defeat. It was exactly what he was afraid of. "We have reviewed the data from the horizon," said the president of the European coalition. Her voice trembled slightly. "This council. They have ships that can move between stars in seconds. They have weapons that can destroy planets. We have railguns and nuclear missiles. We are like children throwing rocks at a tank. They gave us a way out," the Prime Minister of the Asian Alliance said quietly. "If we surrender the drives, we live. If we surrender the military, they leave us alone. They said they only want to contain us. They did not say they wanted to destroy us." "Containment is death," Scott said. His voice was gravelly, cutting through the murmurs of agreement around the table. "If we give up the fold drive, we never leave this solar system. Ever. We are trapped on this rock until the sun burns out. We will run out of resources. We will wither. We will eventually turn on each other again and destroy ourselves without their help. Better that than being glassed from orbit." A man shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "General, be reasonable. They gave us 24 hours. That deadline expires in 6 hours. We need to send the surrender signal now." Scott stood up. He placed his hands flat on the table. "We are not dealing with a rational government that we can negotiate with. We are dealing with a bully. A bully who has never been punched in the nose." Suddenly, the heavy metal doors at the back of the room slid open with a hiss. A woman walked in. She wore a lab coat over a simple suit, and her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days, but her eyes were bright and sharp. This was Director Lisa Vance, the head of research and development. "You are arguing about the wrong things," Lisa said, walking straight up to the hologram. She tapped a command into her tablet, and the image of the alien ship changed. It now showed a complex diagram of glowing waves. "I have been analyzing the data Tom Cole brought back. Specifically, the scan of their shields." General Scott looked at her. "Lisa, we are in the middle of a crisis. Can this wait?" "No," she said firmly. "It cannot. Listen to me. The Council ship that intercepted the horizon had shields. We thought they were impenetrable. But look at the frequency." The room stared at the glowing waves. Most of the leaders didn't understand the science, but they understood the tone of Lisa's voice. "Their shields are tuned to stop energy weapons and high-velocity physical impacts," Lisa explained, speaking quickly. "They are perfect. They are flawless. But there is a flaw. When the alien ship disabled the horizon, they used a pulse. A harmonic resonance." She paused for effect, looking around the room. That pulse was designed to knock out our electronics. But, while it was hitting our ship, our sensors were able to get a microsecond read of their shield harmonics. They oscillate. They breathe. And every 4 seconds, there is a gap. A gap so small you cannot see it with the naked eye. But it is there. Are you saying we can shoot through it? The president asked, leaning forward. Not with bullets, Lisa said. Not with missiles. But I have been working on the fold drive. I have been trying to turn it into a weapon. We call it the phase torpedo. She pulled up another image. It looked like a simple metal cylinder. The fold drive moves a ship from point A to point B by bending space. I have taken that engine and shrunk it down. This torpedo doesn't fly through space. It creates a tiny bubble of bent space. It can skip right through their shields. It can phase through solid matter and detonate inside their ship. The room was silent. The implications of her words hung in the air. Have you tested this? Scott asked. We ran simulations 10 minutes ago, Lisa said. In the simulation, one torpedo from a human ship bypassed the Council's shields and destroyed a vessel 10 times the size of the Horizon. It is just a simulation, a leader argued. We cannot bet the survival of the human race on a simulation. It is better than betting it on the mercy of aliens, Scott snapped. He turned to the table. We are not surrendering. I have heard enough. We are fighting. You cannot be serious. The Prime Minister stood up. We have one prototype torpedo. That is your plan. It is not just the torpedo, Scott said. It is the strategy. The Council is old. They are arrogant. They sit on their high horses and judge us. They expect us to be afraid. They expect us to beg. That is their weakness. He walked to the wall, where a large strategic map of the solar system was displayed. We have mobilized every ship we have. We have retrofitted our cargo haulers, our mining ships, and our cruisers. We are going to launch everything we have at them. But they are at the edge of the system, a general from the army pointed out. It will take hours to get there. We are not going to fly straight at them, Scott said. A grim smile touched his lips. We are going to use the fold drive. Not to travel long distances, but for tactical jumps. We are going to appear right on top of them. We are going to swarm them. They will kill us all, the president whispered. Maybe, Scott said. But if we go down, we go down fighting. That is the human way. Deep in the lunar shipyards, far from the arguing politicians on Earth, the real work was happening. The moon was a hive of activity. Giant robotic arms welded armor plates onto hulls. Technicians in pressure suits ran across the dust, carrying tools and data pads. Captain Ryan stood on the bridge of the UES Vindicator. It was a medium-sized warship, fast and heavily armored. Normally, Ryan would be excited to take a new ship out, but today his stomach was in knots. He looked at his pilot, a young woman named Ensign Sarah. Status report, Ryan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. All systems green, Captain, Sarah replied. She looked just as nervous as him. The fold drive is calibrated. We are carrying 2 of the phase torpedoes Director Vance made. They are locked and loaded. Ryan looked out the viewport at the gray landscape of the moon. Dozens of other ships were floating nearby, preparing for launch. It was a strange sight. Ships of different classes and sizes, painted with the flags of old nations, were now gathered under one banner. The banner of Earth. This is crazy, Ryan muttered to himself. We are going to attack a galaxy-spanning empire with a fleet of scrap metal. It is not scrap metal, sir, Sarah said softly. It is hope. The intercom crackled. It was General Scott's voice, broadcast to every ship in the fleet. All forces, this is General Scott. The deadline has passed. The Council has not received their surrender signal. They are likely preparing their weapons to fire on Earth right now. We have caught them by surprise. They expect a message. We are going to give them a war. Ryan took a deep breath. Sarah, prepare for immediate launch. Set coordinates for the edge of the system. We jump on my command. Aye, Captain. Across the solar system, the fleet began to move. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, but compared to the massive city ships of the Council, it looked like a swarm of mosquitoes attacking a lion. Back on Earth, in the bunker, the politicians watched the main screen. They saw the hundreds of red dots representing human ships disappear from the radar near the moon and reappear near the edge of the solar system. They did it, Lisa Vance whispered. The jump worked. General Scott stood tall, his hands behind his back. Now, he said. Let us see how they handle a punch. In the deep darkness of space, far past Pluto, the Council blockade fleet waited. It was a small fleet, just 5 automated dreadnoughts designed to enforce the surrender. They were beautiful, silent, and deadly. Suddenly, space tore open. Hundreds of human ships burst into existence, less than 100 miles from the alien fleet. The Council ships reacted slowly. Their sensors scanned the chaotic arrival. They were confused. Why had the humans come so close? Why weren't they surrendering on the bridge of the lead Council ship? An artificial intelligence processed the data. It calculated the threat level. It was low. The human weapons were primitive. But then, it detected a strange energy spike. The UES Vindicator fired. A torpedo launched from Ryan's ship. It didn't fly toward the enemy. It vanished into a shimmer of blue light. A split second later, it reappeared inside the hull of the massive Council dreadnought. The torpedo detonated. From the outside, it looked like the alien ship just ripped apart from the inside. Fire and debris exploded outward, shattering the beautiful silver hull. The shock wave hit the other ships, rocking them violently. Direct hit. Sarah shouted on the bridge of the Vindicator. The enemy ship is destroyed. The communication channels lit up. The human fleet, moments ago paralyzed by fear, suddenly erupted in cheers. They saw the explosion. They saw the impossible. They had killed a god. Fire at will. Ryan shouted, his fear replaced by adrenaline. Show them what we have. Hundreds of railguns and plasma cannons opened up. The space between the two fleets lit up with the streaks of human weapons. The war for humanity had begun. The explosion of the Council dreadnought lit up the dark void of space like a newborn star. It was a brilliant, silent bloom of fire and debris that expanded outward, crashing into the nearby ships. On the bridge of the UES Vindicator, the crew stared at the view screen in shock. For a second, no one spoke. They had just destroyed a ship that was 10 times the size of their own. I can't believe it, Ensign Sarah whispered, her hands hovering over her controls. The shot went right through their shields. Captain Ryan shook himself out of his daze. He looked at the tactical display. The massive red dot that represented the lead alien ship had vanished. But there were 4 more red dots remaining. The surprise attack had worked, but the enemy was not defeated yet. Don't stop staring. Ryan shouted, his voice cutting through the silence. Reload the phase torpedoes. Target the next ship. We have to keep the pressure on. If we give them time to think, we are dead. Aye, Captain. The tactical officer replied. The crew snapped back into action, the shock turning into focus. They were soldiers, and they had a job to do. Across the battlefield, the rest of the Earth fleet was swarming. The human ships were small, fast, and ugly compared to the sleek silver vessels of the Council. They moved like angry hornets, diving and weaving through the void. The Council ships were trying to target them, but their automated systems were confused. The aliens were used to enemies who stood still and fought honorably. They were not used to enemies who used chaos as a weapon. The remaining Council dreadnoughts began to return fire. Beams of purple energy lanced out, slicing through the darkness. One beam struck a human cruiser, the UES Valiant. There was no flash, no explosion. The ship simply ceased to exist where the beam hit it, sliced cleanly in half. The atmosphere vented into space, carrying debris and bodies with it. Ryan saw the Valiant die. He gritted his teeth. They are targeting the big ships first. Jason, get us closer. I want to be right under their noses. They can't aim that low if we are hugging their hull. Evasive maneuvers, sir. Jason yelled. He pushed the throttle forward, and the Vindicator surged ahead. The ship shook violently as a near miss sent shockwaves against their armor plating. On Earth, in the deep command bunker, the atmosphere was tense. The main wall showed a live feed of the battle. It was chaotic and hard to follow, but the destruction of the first alien ship was clear. General Scott stood with his arms crossed, his eyes locked on the screen. Around him, the world leaders were watching with a mix of horror and awe. They had voted for this, but seeing the reality of space warfare was different. It was terrifyingly fast. Report, Scott barked. The Vindicator has scored a confirmed kill, a technician said. The enemy formation is breaking. They are trying to scatter to get a better firing angle. They are adapting, Scott said. Lisa, are the shields holding on our ships? Lisa Van stood next to him, typing rapidly on a tablet. Our standard armor is useless against their main guns. We are taking heavy losses. But as long as we can keep using the phased torpedoes, we have a chance. We just need to get in range. In space, the battle intensified. The Council ships were rotating, bringing their broadside weapons to bear. They were launching hundreds of small, agile drones to intercept the human fighters. Lieutenant Jason, flying a small stealth fighter, was in the thick of it. He was leading a squadron of Phantom-class ships. They were essentially engines with guns and a cockpit. Squadron, listen up, Jason said over the comms. We can't dogfight these drones. We are faster but they are more maneuverable. Watch your six. I see a group of drones breaking off to attack the horizon. Copy that, lead, replied a pilot named David. We are on them. Jason banked his ship hard to the left. The G-force pressed him into his seat. In the distance, he saw the UES Horizon, Admiral Tom Cole's flagship. It was a large ship, slow to turn, and it was currently being targeted by a swarm of silver specks. We can't let them hit the Admiral, Jason said. David, use your magnetic mines. Scatter them in the path of the drones. Roger. The human fighters swooped down toward the drone swarm. David released a cluster of metallic spheres. As the drones flew over them, the mines activated. They didn't explode, they emitted a massive electromagnetic pulse. The alien drones, reliant on advanced electronics, froze and spun out of control, crashing into each other. "Nice shot," Jason cheered. "Now, let's take out those drone launchers on the enemy ship." Jason aimed his ship at one of the Council dreadnoughts. He fired his plasma cannons, strafing the side of the massive vessel. The purple energy shields rippled but held. "My shots aren't getting through," Jason complained. "Use your torpedoes," crackled the voice of Captain Ryan over the general channel. "We need to hit them all at once. Everyone, concentrate fire on ship number 2. On my mark." This was the riskiest part of the plan. It required coordination between dozens of ships that had never fought together before. But the pilots of Earth were used to improvising. "Ready," Ryan said. 3, 2, 1. Mark. A dozen phased torpedoes launched from different vectors. They vanished into the blue shimmer of phase space. A second later, they rematerialized inside the hull of the second Council dreadnought. The effect was devastating. The internal explosions ruptured the ship's fuel cells. The dreadnought bloomed from the inside out, a massive fireball that consumed the ship instantly. The shock wave was so strong that it pushed several nearby human ships off course. "Another one down," Sarah shouted on the bridge of the Vindicator. But the victory was costly. The remaining 3 Council ships were panicking. They realized their shields were useless against this new weapon, and they switched to defensive tactics. They began to fire wildly, filling space with a web of laser fire. Admiral Tom Cole watched the destruction from the bridge of the horizon. His ship was rocking from the shock waves of distant explosions. "Admiral, the third enemy ship is charging a main weapon," Lieutenant Jason's father, also on the bridge, reported. "It is not aiming at a ship. It is aiming at Earth." Tom's blood ran cold. "They are going to bomb the planet even if they die." "Evasive action," Tom ordered. "Turn the horizon to block the line of fire." "Sir, that will put us directly in the beam." "Do it." The horizon turned its massive bulk, positioning itself between the enemy dreadnought and the blue dot of Earth in the distance. The alien ship fired. A beam of pure purple energy, miles wide, shot across the solar system. It struck the horizon. The alarms screamed. The shields on the horizon collapsed instantly. The armor plating vaporized. Decks were exposed to the vacuum. But the beam was weakened enough that it didn't destroy the ship entirely. It passed through the horizon and continued into deep space, missing Earth by a few thousand miles. "Report," Tom yelled, hanging onto his chair as the ship listed to the side. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, the tactical officer shouted. "We have casualties, Admiral. But the engines are still online. We are still flying." Tom looked at the screen. The alien ship was recharging, but it had left itself exposed. "All remaining ships," Tom's voice boomed over the fleet channel, "weakened but strong. Target that ship. That one fired on our home. Show them no mercy." The remaining human ships, angry and desperate, surged forward. They didn't care about formation. They didn't care about safety. They just wanted to kill the thing that had tried to burn their world. Lisa Vance watched from the bunker. She saw the red dot of the firing ship becoming swarmed by green dots. "General," she said softly. "We might actually win this." General Scott didn't smile. He knew the cost. "Don't celebrate yet, Lisa. War isn't about who is right. It's about who is left." In the silence of space, the battle raged on. Debris from destroyed ships floated like a graveyard of metal. But the human fleet was not retreating. They were advancing. For the first time in history, Earth was fighting back against the stars, and the stars were bleeding. The Council had sent a threat, but Earth had sent bullets. And the bullets were finding their mark. The aliens had thought Earth would be an easy conquest, a simple addition to their collection. They were wrong. They had woken a sleeping giant, and the giant was angry. The vanguard of the Council was breaking. The trap had been sprung, and humanity was the jaws that were snapping shut. The silence that usually filled the void of space was gone. In its place was the chaotic symphony of war. The battlefield was no longer a neat formation of ships, it was a swirling cloud of debris, burning metal, and expanding gases. The remaining Council ships, once proud and silent, were now desperate. Their beautiful silver hulls were scorched and pitted. They moved erratically, trying to shake off the swarm of human vessels that refused to let them rest. On the bridge of the UES Vindicator, the lights flickered. A console near the back sparked, sending a shower of blue sparks into the air. The smell of burnt plastic filled the room. Hull integrity at 40%, Sarah reported, her fingers flying across her keyboard. Captain, the port engine is stalling. We are losing maneuverability. Captain Ryan gripped the armrests of his chair until his knuckles turned white. He looked at the view screen. The third Council dreadnought was still firing, aiming wildly at anything that moved. It was a beast lashing out in its death throes. Divert power from the life support to the engines, Ryan ordered. We don't need to breathe if we're dead. Sir, we are drifting toward the debris field, Jason yelled from the pilot's station. I can't hold her steady. Ryan knew they were in trouble. The Vindicator had taken a hit to their thrusters. They were sitting ducks. But looking at the alien ship, he saw something that made his heart beat faster. The alien dreadnought's main hangar bay doors were open. They were launching escape pods. They are running, Ryan said. The crew is abandoning ship. They are leaving the ship, automated, Sarah asked, surprised. It is a machine, Ryan said grimly. To them, the ship is just a tool. They don't care if it survives as long as the data survives. He turned to Jason. Can you still aim? The targeting computer is offline, Jason said. I have to use manual override. Good, Ryan said. That means the computer can't tell you it's impossible. Ryan stood up. Sarah, prepare the remaining phase torpedoes. We are going in. Sir, we have no shields, Sarah warned. We don't need shields, Ryan said. We need velocity. Jason, I want you to ram this ship right down their throat. Aim for the bridge. Captain, Jason said. There was no fear in his voice anymore, only determination. The Vindicator turned its broken nose toward the massive alien dreadnought. The engines roared, pushing the damaged ship forward. Around them, the rest of the human fleet was breaking off, trying to avoid the explosion that was coming. They knew what Ryan was about to do. General Scott is hailing, Sarah said. He orders us to retreat. Ryan tapped his comm badge. Sorry, General. Can't hear you. We are going in. The Vindicator accelerated. The alien ship fired its defensive lasers, but the human ship was moving too fast and too erratically. A laser beam clipped the Vindicator's wing, shearing it off, but the ship kept going. Impact in 10 seconds, Jason counted down. Firing torpedoes. Sarah shouted. 2 cylinders shot out from the Vindicator just before the human ship struck the hull of the alien. The torpedoes phased through the armor, disappearing inside the enemy vessel. A split second later, the Vindicator smashed into the side of the dreadnought. The crash was catastrophic. The human ship crumpled against the alien hull, breaching the outer layers. Then, the torpedoes detonated deep inside the enemy ship. From the outside, it looked like the alien ship's heart exploded. The shock wave ripped the dreadnought apart. The Vindicator was consumed in the fireball, vanishing instantly. There were no survivors. But the damage was done. The third enemy ship was dead, breaking into two massive halves that drifted away from each other. The explosion of the dreadnought was so bright that it cast shadows on the moon. Inside the Vindicator, there was no pain. The end came too quickly for that. Ryan, Jason, and Sarah were gone in a flash of light. They had traded their lives for a chance to win. On the bridge of the UES Horizon, Admiral Tom Cole watched the explosion. He closed his eyes for a brief second, lowering his head. "The Vindicator is gone, Admiral," a quiet voice said over the intercom. "Record their names," Tom said, his voice rough. "They saved the fleet." But there was no time to mourn. Two Council ships remained. They were the most damaged of the original 5, but they were still dangerous. "The enemy ships are regrouping," the tactical officer announced. "They are linking their computers together." Tom looked at the screen. "What are they doing?" "They are calculating a jump, sir." "They are trying to flee." "Cowards," Tom spat. "Don't let them escape." "All ships, pursue." The human fleet, tired and battered, surged forward. They were angry now. They had lost friends, brothers, and sisters in arms. They wanted to make sure these aliens never threatened Earth again. Meanwhile, a different kind of battle was raging inside the alien ships. Deep in the corridors of the fourth dreadnought, the alarms were silent. The lights were red and flashing. The Council soldiers were tall, slender beings with pale skin and large eyes. They wore sleek suits of armor. But today, they were terrified. A group of Council soldiers stood near the blast doors that led to the engineering bay. They held their plasma rifles tightly, pointing them at the door. The door was glowing red, cut by a blowtorch. "They are coming," one soldier said, his mental voice trembling with fear. "The humans. They are boarding us." "They are beasts," the squad leader replied. "They have no honor. They board a dying ship just to kill." "Open the door," a voice boomed through the corridor. It was not a mental voice, it was a spoken, human voice over the ship's external speakers. The blast doors blew inward with a deafening crash. Smoke filled the corridor. Through the smoke, shadows moved. They were shorter than the Council soldiers. They wore heavy, bulky armor that looked patched together. They carried weapons that looked like primitive cannons. "Fire!" the squad leader shouted. Blue plasma bolts filled the corridor. But the humans did not stop. They didn't use energy shields. They used physical cover, advancing behind chunks of debris. One human, a sergeant named Mike, fired his shotgun. The blast of metal pellets slammed into the Council soldier's chest, shattering the delicate armor. The soldier fell with a sickening crunch. The Council soldiers had never fought like this. Their wars were fought at long range, with computers and drones. They had never seen an enemy that wanted to get close enough to smell their breath. Mike roared and charged, swinging a heavy combat knife. He crashed into the next alien, knocking him to the floor. The brutality was shocking. The aliens tried to use telepathy to confuse him, but Mike's mind was a storm of rage and adrenaline that they could not penetrate. "Clear the sector," Mike yelled over the comms. "Take the engine room." The humans swept through the ship like a flood. They fought with a ferocity that the Council had not seen in thousands of years. The aliens began to retreat, not tactically, but out of pure terror. They realized that their technology meant nothing if the monster was already in the room with them. Back on the horizon, Tom watched the tactical map. "The fourth ship has been captured, Admiral," the officer reported, surprise in his voice. "Marines have secured the engine room. They are raising a white flag." "Good," Tom said. "Tell them to hold the prisoners." "And the last ship?" "It is trying to charge its main drive," the officer said. "But it's too slow. Our fighters are swarming it." The final Council ship was a wreck. It fired randomly, hitting nothing but empty space. Human ships clung to its hull like leeches, blasting away at its weapons systems. It was helpless. "Target their engines," Tom ordered. "We aren't destroying it. We are grounding it." "Aye, sir." A volley of precise fire from the horizon struck the rear of the alien ship. The engines flared and died. The ship lost power, drifting lifelessly in the void. "It is disabled, sir." Tom let out a long breath that he felt he had been holding for days. He looked around the bridge. His crew was exhausted. They were dirty, covered in sweat and grime. Many were crying, tears of relief and sadness. "Report on casualties," Tom asked quietly. The officer hesitated before speaking. "We have lost 400 ships, Admiral. Including the Vindicator. Casualties are in the tens of thousands." Tom nodded solemnly. "A heavy price." But he looked out the viewport. The stars were still there. Earth was still there, spinning blue and safe in the distance. "And the enemy? Their fleet is destroyed or captured, sir." "We have won." Tom sat down in his chair. He looked at his hands, which were shaking slightly. "We have won the battle," he said softly to himself. "But the war is just beginning." He knew the Council would send more ships. They would not take this lightly. But today, humanity had proven something. They had proven that humans were not just ants to be stepped on. They were dangerous. They were resilient. And they were free. The battlefield began to clear. Rescue ships moved out to collect the survivors and the wounded. The wreckage of the alien ships floated in the dark, a testament to the power of human defiance. The silence began to return to space, but it was a different silence now. It was the silence of respect. The galaxy had heard Earth roar, and the galaxy would never be the same. The smoke that filled the bridge of the UES horizon had nowhere to go. The ventilation system was damaged, so the gray haze hung in the air, smelling of burnt plastic and ozone. The once pristine bridge was now a mess of exposed wires and shattered glass panels. Crew members walked with limps, their uniforms stained with soot and dried blood. But despite the destruction, the mood on the ship was not one of defeat. It was a quiet, electric tension. Admiral Tom Cole stood by the cracked viewport, looking out at the devastation. The stars were bright, but between them lay the wreckage of the Council's fleet. Massive chunks of silver metal floated silently, twisting slowly in the void. It was a graveyard of giants. Earth had survived, but the cost was written in the scars on the hulls of the remaining ships and the empty seats on the bridge. "Status report," Tom said, his voice raspy from shouting commands over the last few hours. Lieutenant Jason stepped up to him. The young man looked exhausted, his eyes rimmed with red, but he stood straight. The last enemy ship is secure, Admiral. Our Marines have full control. The alien crew is in the brig. They are confused. They surrendered the moment we breached the bridge. Tom nodded. They don't know how to deal with someone who doesn't fear them. General Scott's face appeared on the main screen, which had been patched back together with temporary cables. The general looked down at Tom from his bunker in Geneva. Admiral Cole, Scott said. The world is watching. We have tracked the remaining Council forces. The automated fleet that guarded the system is gone. The survivors who escaped into hyperspace are scattering. We have a window. Tom turned to face the screen. A window for what, General? A window to speak, Scott said. They are waiting. They expect us to beg for peace now that we have won the skirmish. They expect us to be afraid of what comes next. We need to send a message. Not to the ships we just fought, but to the Council itself. To the thousands of worlds that sit under their rule. Tom understood. He adjusted his uniform jacket, trying to smooth out the wrinkles. It was a futile effort, but it was a gesture of respect for the moment. Open a channel, Tom ordered. Broad spectrum. Use the captured alien encryption code so they can't block it. I want every Council world to hear this. Sir, Sarah said from the communications station. Her voice was steady. She worked the controls, routing the signal through the horizon's powerful array. We are connected to the galactic network. You are live in 3, 2, 1. Tom took a deep breath. He looked into the camera. He didn't try to look like a politician. He didn't try to look like a diplomat. He looked like what he was, a soldier who had fought for his home and won. Beings of the Galactic Council, Tom began. His voice was transmitted across the light years, translated into 1,000 languages by the alien computer systems. This is Admiral Tom Cole of the planet Earth. You sent us a threat. You told us to kneel. You told us that we were a plague. You told us that if we did not surrender our technology and our freedom, you would burn our world. He paused, letting the silence hang heavy. You judged us without knowing us, Tom continued, his tone hardening. You looked at our violence and our wars and called us savages. But you forgot that violence is also a tool for survival. We fought you today. We fought your superior ships with our primitive weapons. We fought your arrogance with our determination. And we won. Tom's gaze intensified. We are not here to beg for peace. We are not here to ask for your permission to exist. The Council sent a threat, but Earth is replying with a declaration of war. In the silence of the bridge, the crew stopped what they were doing to listen. They stood a little taller. We declare that Earth is a sovereign planet, Tom said, enunciating every word clearly. We will keep our drives. We will keep our weapons, and we will keep our freedom. If you want to take this world, you will have to come and get it. But know this, we do not die easily. We do not bow to empires. And we will never surrender. Tom leaned closer to the camera. This is our line in the stars. Cross it, and you will find out exactly why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. End transmission. The screen flickered and went black. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then, someone started to clap. It was Ensign Sarah. Then Jason joined in. Soon, the entire bridge crew was applauding. It wasn't a cheer of joy, it was a sound of unity. They were no longer a divided planet fighting petty wars. They were a force. On Earth, the reaction was explosive. In the cities, millions of people stared at the sky. The threat of extinction was gone. The dread that had paralyzed the population for 24 hours vanished, replaced by a fierce, burning pride. They had stood up to the bullies of the galaxy, and the bullies had backed down. In the bunker, Ambassador Mark Stern sat with his head in his hands. But he wasn't crying anymore. He was listening to the broadcast. He looked up at General Scott. "I thought we were going to die," Mark said softly. "I thought fighting was suicide." General Scott walked over to the large window. The sun was rising over Geneva, casting a golden light over the mountains. "Sometimes, Mark," Scott said, "suicide is better than slavery. Today, the human race chose life. And that life is going to be very different from now on." High above the Earth, the UES horizon began the slow process of moving the disabled Council ship. It was a prize of war. Inside it held technology that would jumpstart Earth science by 1,000 years. Lisa Vance was already preparing teams to study the shields, the engines, and the weapons. The era of humanity hiding in its corner of the galaxy was over. Admiral Tom Cole walked off the bridge and down to the observation deck. He wanted to be alone for a moment. He stood in front of the large window, looking down at the blue and white swirl of the Earth. It looked so peaceful from up here. You couldn't see the scars, the fires, or the fear. He thought about the Council. They were probably listening to his message right now. They were probably angry. They were probably gathering a fleet, a real one this time, not just a small blockade. They would come back with ships 10 times the size of the ones Earth had just destroyed. They would come back to crush the uprising. Tom wasn't afraid of that. He knew what humans were like when their backs were against the wall. He knew that necessity was the mother of invention. The Council had technology, but humanity had grit. They had the ability to adapt, to improvise, and to overcome impossible odds. The war for Earth's place in the universe had just begun. But for the first time in history, humanity wasn't looking up at the stars and wondering who was out there, they were looking out with a challenge in their eyes. Tom rested his hand against the cold glass of the window. He whispered a promise to the stars. "Send your fleets," he said. "Send your best. We will be waiting." The UES horizon drifted peacefully in the orbit of its home world. Below it, a new day was starting. It was a day like any other, but also completely different. It was the first day of the rest of human history. It was the day Earth stopped being a victim and started being a player in the great game of the cosmos. The Council had sent a threat. They expected a trembling child to obey. Instead, they had woken a sleeping giant. And the giant was hungry. The declaration was sent. The line was drawn. There was no going back. The galaxy would tremble at the name of Earth. Tom turned and walked back toward the bridge. He had repairs to oversee. He had wounded to care for. And he had a war to plan. The silence of space was gone, replaced by the roar of humanity, and Admiral Tom Cole wouldn't have it any other way.